Hi, this is Frid from The Joy of Syntax and English in Color. I was asked yesterday which grammar books I recommend. And, well, that's a very complex answer, actually. My first question for whoever wants to know is this. Why do you think you need a grammar book? What do you want to do? Um, a lot of people think, or many people think, that if you want to learn a language, you need to study grammar. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a grammar freak. I'm I'm an author, a published author. My very first book was or is a grammar that's 460 pages long. So I love grammar. Yet, I don't recommend studying grammar if you want to learn a language, at least not in the beginning. Um, I'll tell you how I learned English. I learned English by reading books that I loved. The first book that I ever read from cover to cover was some kind of crime story. I don't remember the title or author. I don't remember what the book looked like. It was about this thick. And I just remember plowing through it, struggling with them, with many words I didn't know, and I simply kept going. And by yeah, by when after I had read the book or after I had finished it, I knew who had killed whom and why and how. That's it. I I didn't get much more, but I was so proud of myself, and I kept reading books. And within a year, I could understand everything. At the same time, I also had very fantastic English lessons with a very, very good teacher. And he gave us a lot of stuff to read. Many of the books that I read during that first year of my transformation were recommended by him. Um, and he did all kinds of things during his lessons, and I don't remember much of that. I just remember that I loved going to class and that I started reading like crazy. And I also did two other things that were very important. I started looking at words in the dictionary and I copied them out into a journal. And I always meant to learn them, but I never did. But the mere fact that I copied these sentences, the words out with example sentences, that gave me additional reading practice. And also, um, when you copy something by hand with love, then somehow it goes into your subconscious more easily. That was one thing I did. And then I also copied out beautiful sentences or sentences that I found noteworthy. So as I read through my novels or whatever I read, I always had a pen in hand. I always read with my pen and I underlined things that I loved. And when I was completely in love with something, I copied out the sentence. So copying out words with example sentences and then model sentences from novels and other texts that I read really helped me. Yeah, and then I also listened to the radio and I watched TV a little bit, but those were the times before the internet. I didn't have a TV growing up, and when I fell in love with English, I begged my parents to buy a TV. And we lived, and I still live, close to the Dutch border, and we were able to get in one or two Dutch channels. So you had to position the antenna just right, and then I could watch Dallas and Dynasty once a week, and an Australian show that was called Carson's Law. And I loved that. So you always have to check your time, the time, and you had to be on time. So I didn't have a VCR or anything, so I had to make sure I caught the show. And then I had to position the antenna just right, and then I was able to listen to or and watch an American or Dutch show. That was always wonderful, and I actually learned quite a bit watching those few shows. They were not high quality, but they dealt with vocabulary that you use every day. So that was great. Yeah, so what I can say to anybody who wants to study a language, Read books that are not too difficult. Children's books are fantastic, actually. Watch Sesame Street, watch children's shows and movies, and watch other things that you find interesting. You know, if there's a movie that you totally love and you've watched it in your mother tongue, watch it in English 10 times in a row. Um, yeah, and take notes. So watch movies like crazy, listen to audiobooks, read, read, read. And with all that input, it's very important that it's not too hard, but even more important is that you love it. It has to be on a topic that's dear to your heart. So if you love reading novels, that's great, read novels. If you love reading magazines on basketball, read those. So number one, it has to be fun for you. You have to love it. Number two, it has to be something that you need. So if you are supposed to give a presentation in English on a subject from biology, well then read journals on scientific journals that deal with your topic. Read Wikipedia, even though lots of teachers say Wikipedia sucks. I love Wikipedia. I think a lot of the articles are very, very good. Yeah, read anything that you can get your hands on and that you find interesting. And in the beginning, of course, it's a bit of a struggle, but it will become easier and easier. And the next tip that I have is listen to Jazz Chants by Carolyn Graham, and I particularly recommend these two, the Grammar Chants and um, this CD called Small Talk, More Jazz Chants. I love those. Anything by Carolyn Graham is great, but these are my two favorites. Yeah, if you keep listening to those, she's ingenious. I'll talk about that another time, but she took everyday conversations and put jazz underneath it, and she really caught the rhythm of everyday American English. One example, one of my favorite songs is Hi, how are you? And Germans always say, Hi, how are you? Fine, how are you? But Americans say, Hi, how are you? So they have a different rhythm to it. And they link all the words. And then the answer is, Fine, how are you? So if you listen to these songs all the time, you get this rhythm and the flow and the vocabulary of everyday American English. So it's fantastic. Yeah. Now, if you want to study a bit more, there's a difference between language acquisition, which is, this process of immersing yourself in this environment and simply absorbing stuff like a sponge. And it's wonderful how our brain simply does that. And I know my camera, I guess I moved too fast. Anyway, so if you do want to deal with grammar, there are various things I can recommend. I totally love this book. This is like a grammar dictionary. So if you have anything you want to look up, like you're not sure about if clauses or not sure about the use of should, you look them up in the index in the back. Somehow something's wrong with my camera. It's not reacting very well. Anyway, so you look it up in the back in the index, and then you just read these little articles on there. The future in the past is something I just opened up. I think this book is fantastic. Now, this book is a dictionary. It's a grammar dictionary. So you have a specific answer, you will find example sentences and explanations in this book. But they don't teach you the big picture. This book gives you specific examples and specific answers to specific questions. And it's fantastic. It's well used. I have actually the 1995 edition and the 2005 edition. I totally love this book. I think everybody should have it on his or her desk. Now, I also love English Grammar in Use by Murphy. He also has an essential or a basic English Grammar in Use. That's Red Book. Please get the one that's by him only and that has a CD-ROM in it and the answers. Without answers, it's useless. And then I actually do not recommend that you do the tasks or the exercises. What he does is on the left-hand side, he always explains something. For instance, here he explains the difference between can, could, and to be able to. So he talks about tenses, the use of tenses, the use of modals, reported speech, questions, and auxiliaries. And his explanations are wonderful. His example sentences are fantastic. So what I recommend doing is, when you want to brush up on something, you read the left-hand side, then you go to the key and you read the answers. So you get the correct input. I don't believe in gap text and I don't believe in gap sentences, because if you know the answer, it's a no-brainer. If you don't know the answer and you write down something wrong, your brain won't, and then you correct it, your brain won't remember which is the right one. Your brain doesn't understand no. So your brain will memorize the wrong and the right answer and be confused. So just read the correct answers, copy them out. So that's another tip that I have. Now, if you want to read about the history of the English language a little bit, or have a grammar on historic principles and go in depth, and you have a lot of patience, I love George Kern. I read, and to this day, I keep reading in George Kern. I think he's fantastic. He was a very learned man. He knew Old English, German also, um, er, um, Middle English, early modern English, modern English. He read widely. He read a lot of British and American literature. He talks intelligently about a lot of topics, about everything actually you need to know, but you need a lot of patience. So I don't recommend that to beginners. I recommend it to total nerds. Now, of course, I am also completely in love with my very own grammar book, The Joy of Syntax and the Zen of Grammar Practice. I totally love the book. I also have a few YouTube videos where I talk about the book. I can quickly recap. It has 4 parts. In the first part, I present all of English syntax very logically and in color. I designed a color parsing system that um, makes it much easier to deal with concepts. So when you do sentence analysis and you have to find subjects and your verb and your object and your adverbial, etc., I assigned colors to these clause elements. And the color system is really lovely because it distracts your attention a little bit from all these different nomenclatures and terminologies floating around that are confusing, even though I do deal with that. And it actually makes style visible on the page. Um, so that's it. I really, really like my color system, and I think it's quite ingenious, even if I say so myself. And in the second part, I actually apply this color system to different styles, and I show that styles are basically syntax and which is word order, and word choice in love. So I explain style in terms of syntax and word choice. And I find that very helpful because a lot of people talk about style. They say, oh, it's a flowery style or a masculine style or a feminine style. Well, what does that mean? But if you understand grammar and then you apply your holistic and deep understanding of grammar to styles, then you can really put your fingers and on each particular characteristic or feature of a style. It's very rewarding. In part 3, I color parse real life examples like poems and some excerpts from texts and a short story by Fred Lebrun, which he kindly permitted me to reproduce in the grammar. And I show you how style is grammar. Again, I show that to you in action, and I show you how you need an understanding of grammar if you want to really understand and analyze texts. And again, it's such fun to see how these different styles come alive when you color parse them. And in the fourth part, I give you overviews over all the things I discussed. For instance, there's an overview of all the main clause structures that exist, and an overview over all the subclauses that exist, and all reduced clauses, and about modification, how modification works, restrictive and non-restrictive and free modification. and an overview of all the types of relative clauses there are, etc. So, and then the fourth part and the fifth part is actually an appendix where I talk a little bit about tenses and some other matters that are very important but are not part of the grand scheme of the book itself. So I really, really love my grammar book. It's designed as a one semester course. You're supposed to read it from beginning to end in chronological order. I do not have an index in it, but I have a very good table of contents. And it's an index would have been more work for me again. And the idea is also that you read the book cover to cover. Anyway, it is for people who want to deeply understand grammar. And again, I must emphasize, when you understand grammar, you become smarter, you understand how language works, you understand what language is to you if you don't pay attention and what you can do with it. You understand how language enables you to view the world, how it's a perception tool as well as a narrative tool. You know, we use language to tell ourselves and others stories about our existence. And these stories can be life enriching and connecting and compassionate, or they can be separating and actually harmful. And it's very good to understand how we use language to tell us these ourselves and each other these stories. And it's very good to then reevaluate these stories and see how can't we retell them in life enriching ways. So I'm very passionate about grammar teaching, and I actually think that everybody who wants to vote and should study grammar, but studying grammar makes you smarter, it makes you more aware, but it doesn't in itself make you acquire a language. So language acquisition happens with your subconscious mind and with your whole body. It happens by immersing yourself, and our brain and body and subconscious mind or whatever wonderfully picks up structures and organizes them for us and enables us to use them without our brain, our cognitive faculty really being able to explain what's happening. You all know that. You hear a sentence and you know, oh, that's a sentence that feels good to me, and that feels right, and this feels wrong, but you can't necessarily explain it. And we all know, as native speakers, we usually don't know anything about our native language. Anyway, so if you want to understand English deeply in context and apply that knowledge to text analysis and text production, then my grammar book is great. But if you just want to acquire English, just read books that you love and watch movies, watch YouTube clips, anything. Yeah, so that was my long answer on grammar books and what I think about them and which ones I recommend. I actually have more grammar books. Some I love and some I don't like so much. I gave you the more important ones. And by the way, I'll mention that I have a grammar book that's 140 years old. And what's fantastic about it is you can still use it and it's still good. It still discusses the same structures. Styles have changed in the last 140 years. Vocabulary has changed, but the basic structures of English have not changed. Maybe you use some more than others now, but basically English is extremely well, we can understand everything that was written 140 years ago, and so this grammar book is still useful. Yeah, maybe I'll do another video about that. Anyway, I hope this has helped you, and I will see you in my next video. Take good care, and bye bye.